to Circular Firing Squad. I'm Marty Jensius, a counseling faculty at Kent State University and host of Circular Firing Squad. We've got 4 members, 4 questions, and 4 answers for each question. Each squad member generates a question that they've come up with, and we all have to respond to them, including our own. So let's see who's with us tonight. It's a lovely, lovely night, and we've got a nice, I guess this is like a bridge table. We've got 4 people sitting around the table. Perfect setup for that. Elliott?
Hi, Elliott Ingersoll, professor of counseling at Cleveland State University and host of Apply Topically.
Hey, everybody. Mitch Conrad, third-year clinical mental health graduate student at Cleveland State University and counselor trainee at Baldwin Wallace University.
Hi, I'm Angelika, licensed professional counselor, owner of Golden Hour Counseling and Wellness, and PhD candidate at Kent State University.
All right, so let's start with the first question, and that goes to Elliott.
Okay. What are the best and worst parts of conferences?
So I think I've been to 2 conferences now, both in person, and I would say that the thing that felt like the best to me is getting a chance to see like what other people are interested in. And it's like, okay, this is just like not something that is even on my radar, or it's something that I haven't really thought about before, or it's something that I hadn't had much exposure to. And also seeing just like generally like, okay, this person is like feels really passionate about this and is incredibly interested in this. And this is what they're bringing to the table to a conference, right? Like it's, I remember seeing some presenters at the last conference that I went to that were like, I think these people are just like here to just because they feel passionate about it. And that's always really cool to see. I think the part that I don't like the most, like I don't mind staying in hotel rooms or anything like that. I do really prefer like going to bed in like my own space. And like sometimes like it's nice to be in a hotel room, and it's fine, but I do prefer being in my own bed at night.
For me, the best part of going to conferences is networking. I just love meeting people in general, and I meet the coolest people when I'm there all the time. It never fails. It's just nice to meet the researcher behind the research, especially as I'm in my literature review of my dissertation phase, and I get to meet people that I'm citing in my paper. So I think that is like probably my favorite part of it. I would say the worst part for me is the cost. I really do wish they made it a little bit more affordable and accessible, especially for presenters.
All right, it goes to me. Conferences, the worst part for me is large receptions. There are just like too many people at a reception. There's too much noise going on. I can't hear anything. It's dark. I can barely see anything. But they have these large receptions where everybody, and then you all fight for food in the middle. They have like long lines for getting little scraps of food. I'm never really fed well at those large receptions. I wish they would just have a place that's like, okay, here's where the quiet kids go sit, and just tables where people can sit and talk and have conversations about many of the things that you say that you enjoy doing. So for me, that's the worst part of conferences. I begin skipping those because you do one lap around the big room and you say hi to a few folks, and you wind up shouting, they wind up saying something, and you smile and like you're listening and nod. They could be saying, my cat just died, and you're just smiling and nodding because you can't hear them anyways. And then you kind of work yourself out, and then you're in competition for everybody else that's looking for a place to eat. So finding easy and convenient places to go get something to eat is the other worst part for me. I got to go against Mitch's grain. The best part for me is I don't have to make my bed in the morning. I get to sleep nobody bothers me. I'm not on call to do anything with the dog. I love living in a hotel for that purpose alone. Maybe with the exception of the limited coffee available through the little coffee Keurig that they have in there. But I like the ideas I get. And generally, one good conference, I'll have a meal with somebody and they'll give me a really good idea, or we'll talk about a really good idea, something we could work on. But I agree also with Angelika. They're too expensive, but there's no way around that because the settings and the sites, they're trying to make money off a conference in a dying economy. And so it just gets really expensive. Those are and I just came back from one. I came back from one in Florida. Usually I like to travel. That I really enjoy doing. In this case, the trip I took to Florida was like travel from hell because I pulled up to the airport parking lot and all the lots were full because of the spring breakers had filled them up. So I couldn't find a parking spot. So I had to drive back home another 40 minutes and get my son to drive me to the airport later for another flight, which was delayed in about an hour and a half, which delayed a flight that I had reassigned in another location to get to, which meant I was 4 hours at the other location. So 5:30 until I finally arrived at the hotel at 10:30 at night. 5:30 in the morning until I arrived at the airport or at the hotel at 10:30. I usually like traveling. This was just a mess, and I will have to seriously think about conferences that are held during spring break, particularly in the spring break areas that people go to.
Good answers, everyone. Yeah, I think for me, clearly the best part is networking and reconnecting with people, which, I sometimes I only see them at these conferences. And ever since I got sick, I have had trouble just building in time to do proposals, and I haven't gotten to too many conferences. I'm hoping that I'll be able to get back to them this year. We'll just see how things go. But yeah, I do miss that. I miss the networking with people. I love hotels. I freaking love them. I'm like room service, man. I love them. I'm like, don't make my bed for 6 days. No problem. I'm just here chilling in my room. It's all good. Yeah. So yeah, you get a nice hotel room with a nice view, and that takes a lot of the sting out of it. I think the traveling is the worst part though for me. I like to drive. I like the best conference I ever went to. I went on my Harley down to the All Ohio, man. I just drove that down. It was awesome. It was the way I like to drive. It was the way I like to do things, but that's going to be a little trickier if I have to drive it to Colorado. So yeah, I don't like to travel as much, but I miss the networking.
Yeah, I did a lot more room service this trip. It was like, got to get cleaned up, got to go downstairs. I've got my own workflow. The guy can deliver it to my door, and they did a nice job of delivery. It wasn't these roll in the cart. It's like, here's your shopping bag full of food, sir. And so I did a lot more room service just because of the ease of doing it. Yeah, a little more costly, but I could work and live in my own life. That was different and fun for me too. Mitch, you've got the next question.
Sure thing. And I realize I'm asking this question as I'm about to graduate, what are important steps that new graduates from counseling programs can take moving into their careers?
That goes to Angelika. Yeah.
Is it me? Okay. I love this question. I feel like if you want to be successful, securing a good supervisor and getting good at making lists, if you're not already good at making lists, should be your top priority. Developing your identity as a professional counselor, that will come with time and with experience and each setting that you try on for size, in my opinion. I think you're going to want to focus on making a good list of referrals from the networking events that you're attending regularly, and a list of like local resources and interventions and techniques that are basically your bread and butter for the client demographic that you tend to gravitate towards or work with. And then start tracking your hours towards independent licensure. So I think that if you can do those things, right out of the gate, you'll be in good shape.
I got to say, my answer to this question is go to more conferences. Because I never felt fully prepared to be able to work with people after finishing my master's degree, and I don't think anybody should. But I learned a lot, and it was ka-ching, here's the credit card. I learned a lot from basically using and going to conferences, going to short workshops, things like that. So for me, the best thing you can do is to continue that momentum of learning new specialty. So you're going to be working maybe at an agency, or you're going to be working with a certain population. You should be attempting to attend as many of those types of workshops as you can to learn about the folks you're going to work with, because you're not going to get that kind of drill down specific in a general counseling program. So if you're going to go into practice, that's what I think you should do. So if you're in our field, you have a master's and you're going to go out and work in an agency or work in some sort of practice, continue to learn, gather all the materials up you had from your graduate program. I hope you've kept them along with the textbooks and organize them so you can have them for use as you need it. Even if they don't give you the answers, they'll give you the inspiration. If you're going on to an advanced degree, like a doctoral degree, then I think networking is important and being to get out again, to go to conferences, to meet people in your specialty area. But also, you've got to figure out how to organize your life a little differently than what the expectations were for a master's. So those would be my two suggestions as you move on to your career.
Those are good ones. I would, and again, I'm just coming from a neurodivergent point of view, and I'll just give you the best I had. Say yes to everything until your calendar gets filled up. And then when you finish one of the first things you said yes to, and there's a slot that opens up on your calendar, say yes to something else and fill that slot. Just keep them filled over and over. That was how it worked for me. I just said yes to everything. And then I was able to start discerning, well, oh yeah, okay, this opportunity I really liked. This one I didn't like. This one I liked, but I wouldn't have known unless I tried things, including things I utterly despised. And I didn't go into it with that attitude, but I'm like, okay, I learned that I despise this. Good. Don't do it again. Move on. Next thing.
Okay, we're back to, Mitch, right?
Yeah.
Okay, Mitch.
In a sense, like, I don't want to pretend that I have like a good answer to this question because I haven't done it yet. So just really about to graduate and have been thinking about like, what does it look like to move on to new careers? I think, or to a new career. I think one of the things that has been helpful has been to talk with other people about their experiences at their individual sites. So we all sort of have an idea of like what's generally going on out there and how, right? Like Angelika, love what you said about like a good supervisor, right? Like, and how important that can be. And knowing what supervision, knowing what like preferred or non-preferred supervision looks like, can involve having conversations with others about like, hey, like what is your supervision, like, what's going on for you in that process. And I think that's been beneficial for me as I've been moving towards this, is like having generally like a better idea of like what I would prefer out there at like a site or from a supervisor, based on conversations that I've had with other people. So yeah, thanks everybody for your answers.
And now that's all cool. I enjoy thinking about that. That was a good question for me, having been through a counseling career and now working at an institution, to try and think deliberately about what were those things that were important to me or that turned out to be important for me in terms of organizing my career. Angelika, you've got the next question.
Yeah. So my question is, what is your favorite board game or card game?
Wow. I think for me, I've never been a great board game player. I've gone through phases in my life. In college, it was sitting around in my dorm playing Uno and getting really good at it. You could not, or Mealsborn was another game that we played a lot. And you could not get me to explain how to play it nowadays. I just can't remember, but it was something that was kind of a passionate ritual that we did. The other thing was backgammon. I got pretty nifty and quick and at playing backgammon and pretty much dropped that off. Went to Turkey, and while I was in Turkey, you see these old guys. That's what they do. They sit like in cafes and they're just moving like crazy and everybody's watching them play. And so, but I haven't done backgammon in a while. I guess I'd have to say the most recent board game that I played that was my favorite is a board game called Ruin It. And you have, I think, less than 4 words that you can say, but the question is posed to you and to the whole group. And then you have to come up with something 4 words or less that would ruin it or ruin the experience. I have a family that when we get together, we get pretty crude, and it's part of the playfulness that we have as family. And So everybody's trying to out shock each other or out clever each other with this game when we've played it. And I think the best answer that was ever given in the game, and it sticks in my head, was from my nephew's wife, who is very, very nice, fine, lovely person, loves animals, is just a great individual, progressive thinking and stuff like that. And the question was, name something that would ruin losing your virginity. And her response was, which knocked us all on the floor, Daddy didn't cuddle enough. Yeah. And you can't come back from that. You can't come back from that when she says that or writes it out. And so that has kind of now become a meme of its own in our family. Daddy didn't cuddle enough. And it takes us back to that moment. So if I'm going to say a favorite board game, and again, often the family gets together and it's like, oh, bring some board games. We'll do stuff, 5-second rule. We'll do some other things that they have. And I'm like, nah, I just, I don't want to put the energy into being competitive right now. But that game was something.
Yeah, I think there's a game in Canada, Crokinole. Any Crokinole fans out there? Honestly, what I think it is, it's the original version of Battling Tops that came out in the 70s in the States. Crokinole, you have they're about the size of a checker, little discs, and you're going to flick them into a dish, and there's concentric circles in the dish for points. And then wherever you land it, and then there's a very small thing for 20 points right in the center. Wherever you land it, those are the points you get. But it did, when I played that with my cousins and uncles, and then when I was in the States, my other cousins got Battling Tops, and I was like, oh, it's like Crokinole, but it just didn't have the concentric circles. So I think that was one, and I haven't played it for a while. But yeah, that was a fun game. And I have to say, I don't know if you know this, Marty, but the most popular board game in Canada is Monopoly. And that is a runner-up favorite of my own. So I got to throw that one in there.
Yeah, I was thinking, when thinking of the answer to this, I was thinking Monopoly. I haven't played Monopoly in a long time, but I used to play it a lot as a kid and thought, yeah, that's a safe bet for me to say that in terms of response, until I remembered Ruin It and the experience we had with Ruin It. So, yeah,
hey, Marty.
Yeah.
By the way, my son wants to play Monopoly with you. I think
Really?
That might be a meeting of the Titans. You guys should consider it.
Oh, I'm not that good at it. I'm terrible at it, which is why I never went into real estate. And often I'm just waiting for the moment for the damn game to end, which is a problem with it, Whereas
that's what half the people in America are doing right now. We're just waiting for the game to end. How long does this game take? We've been here 20 years. I'm sorry. What's going on?
All right, Mitch.
So, favorite board game / card game / I suppose tile game, Riichi Mahjong is one of the games that I really enjoy playing. I can play with 3 or 4 people. I guess it reminds me of Rummy, and I used to play Rummy growing up with my grandma. It was actually my grandma's. She's since passed, but it was her 100th birthday yesterday, and we would play Rummy with her, sort of at her home, and then we would play Rummy when she eventually went to nursing home. And that was a game that she would she always loved playing. There was sort of this, if people played Rummy before, right? And she would generally pick up 17 cards at once or something like that. That was just her thing. And she win some, lose some, right? And but it was always fun to play with her. It's also, Mahjong's also kind of like poker in a way, and I've always, been curious about poker, but could never really play. It was sort of like a taboo thing until the World Series of Poker came along, but loved that game. And so it's a very interesting tile game, forming melds and, making really, it feels like sometimes really intense decisions during the game. And so I love some Riichi Mahjong.
Oh, wow. Thanks, everyone. I wrote some of these down, so now you've all contributed to my online shopping cart. So thank you. I just love the stories that everyone had about playing games and reminiscing on family events and bringing people together. I think that's just one of my favorite parts about games in general. And it's been on my mind recently. I just hosted a game night. I have a decent modern game collection. And I get so excited to bring them out and introduce people to new games. I would say that mine is Herd Mentality. This is a more modern game, and it's like a party game where the goal is to think like everyone else in the room. So when it's your turn, you pull a card and you read the question out loud on the card, something like, what's the best type of ice cream or the best flavor? And then everyone, including you, writes down their answer. And when you reveal the answer, you get points if you thought like the majority of people in that room. And then if no one has matching answers, no one gets any points. And then if one person got a different answer than everyone else, they get like what's called the pink cow. So like you want to think like the herd mentality, and the pink cow is supposed to isolate you and make you feel shame, probably. I don't know. I actually really get excited when I get the pink cow. But yeah, I think it's a fun game, and the playability is like endless because it changes with every group that you're in. And surprise, surprise, this therapist likes the social dynamic in that aspect of that particular game. So it's a good one. And it's whenever I do host like a game night, I think about the types of games that I want to introduce them to, or I always let them pick if they have ones on their own that they want to explore and try out. But as a fallback, I'll have like, well, I think you might like this one just based off of the gameplay, the group of the size of the group, or how long it takes to play a game. Unfortunately, sorry, Marty and Elliott, Monopoly never makes it to that list because that just takes up the entire week, and I don't have a week for a game night. But yeah, no, that would be my favorite game.
Have you ever played Taco, Cat, Goat, Cheese, Pizza?
Yes, that's my first one. It's my warm-up game because it's like the highest energy game, so it gets people excited. It's my opener.
Yeah.
You got cat and goat on a pizza?
No, it's Taco, Cat, Goat, Cheese, Pizza.
Well, but I'm saying, okay.
Wait, no, Marty, you have to explain it now.
I can't. The idea is that there's a pile of cards that are face up in a central pile where people, while saying, as you lay something down, it's a picture of a cat, so you have to say cat. Or no, you're flipping them over and you don't know what it is. Help me, Angelika.
Yeah, so it's a discard game. So everyone gets a certain amount of cards, and then you have to say in the order of like you go clockwise: taco, cat, goat, cheese, pizza. So everyone is discarding one card as we're saying it. And when for example, if I discard a card that is supposed to be cat and it's on my word and it is cat, everyone has to race to the middle of the pile and slap the middle of like basically whose hand is on top, they have to pick up the discard pile. The game ends when you have no more cards left in your hand. So you want to try to discard as much as you can.
Yeah, I played it once. I played it more than once, but I played it against my niece my grandniece, who takes great pride in her being a very good taco, cat, goat, cheese, pizza player. First game we played together, I beat her just by sheer luck. And then she's like, okay, well, we're going to play again, right? And I've refused to ever since. Because she probably needs she needs her ego in check. And so whenever I see her, I can go, now, what was that game we played that I beat you at? Therapy comes in all forms and fashions. So that's what I remember about the game. And frankly, it's a little too fast for me. If you have bad vision and slow reflexes, which is what older people have, you're not going to be successful at this game. But it is an energizer. It is a big energizer for folks. And I can see why, Angelika, you would use it as the first game in your game thing. But I don't want to do anything that's too much like work, which is why I'd rather ruin things and play a game like that than something that requires me to think deeply about my perceptions on the world. Too much like work. So I guess I have the last question in the round that we have. And the question that I have is, what is the biggest misconception about you that you'd like to dispel?
This is a tough one for me because I'm an introvert. And quite frankly, for the life of me, I haven't got a clue what most people are thinking about me. There's a lot of intense energy that I emit. I will admit that, but I'm not out to like crucify people. I guess that would be, I'm not out to crucify people. That would be one thing that I would like some of my colleagues in administration to understand. I'm just trying to get stuff done. And I don't do small talk. I don't do that. So that's the only way I know how to do it, is to go right at it. And I think sometimes maybe people misperceive that as like an attack, when it's just me trying to get shit done before I have to go back to sleep.
This is a tough question. I think one of the things that I've come to remember or realize is that, I can definitely appear, I think, like outwardly confident or outwardly together, especially during like public speaking, but in other scenarios as well. But public speaking is one that comes up. And I've always had what feels like a bit of a knack for public speaking, and that I don't necessarily feel like too overwhelmed. But it's not that I'm not like feeling stuff up there. And I think sometimes the thing that will still get to me is that even when I believe, at least I have this internal way of like representing, especially in front of like a large group of people, like especially when that goes on, I still feel nervous. I still feel anxious, and I'm still dealing with like emotions up there. And that, I've heard from a lot of other people in my life that public speaking can be intimidating. Public speaking can be hard. And it's not that it's not for me. It can be intimidating, and it can absolutely be hard. But yeah, I think it's one of those things that it's something that I feel like I may be outwardly good at, but I know that there's a lot going on in my head whenever I'm up speaking in front of like more than even a couple people.
Just FYI, I've had the privilege of having Mitch do guest lectures in my psycho farm class. And Mitch, your presentation goes down smooth as honey. It's delightful. And I know there's a lot that goes into it. And I know you put a lot of work into it. You prep for it. But whatever's going on up in your mind brain, it doesn't come through in the sense of everyone's just really focused on you. And that's the way it ought to be. But you give a wonderful lecture, and you do have a smooth presentation. So FYI.
This is a tough question. So I have like a short answer, and I have like a more thoughtful answer. The short answer is misconceptions people have about me that just goes back to like, it's none of my business what people think about me or what they say when I'm not in the room. And that's my short answer. The longer, more in-depth answer, I took it more generally. I took it as misconceptions of therapists that I could possibly dispel just by speaking on it in this moment. And I took it as, well, where I brought it was how people tend to believe that therapists are therapists 24/7, which LOL, no, that's not true. And what I mean by that is like people get really shocked by their maybe therapist friend or their family member that's a therapist that has like their own mental health struggles or is in therapy themselves, or, maybe this leads to assumptions and like thinking that they can ask for advice from their friend or family member that's a therapist when they're off duty and they're not at work. Which, speaking for myself, I know that physically and emotionally, it depends on where I'm at that day to respond and comes down to boundaries. But this is very individual for everyone. Some therapists are okay with this, some are not, and everything in between, which is all very okay. But yeah, I just know a lot of therapists that are insightful and self-aware, and they're really good at their jobs. But to believe that all therapists have it figured out and that they don't have their own stuff, or even to like seek out advice repeatedly from a friend that's a therapist when they're off the clock or at a social event and expecting their clinical brain to be on, I think that's a misconception. They're probably not going to give you the most therapist-y answer in that moment. So yeah, this is just a gentle reminder that therapy brains, that's not a 24/7 thing. Not all therapists have it figured out. I don't know anyone that does. And yeah, please compensate your therapist friend for their time. If you're repeatedly walking up to them and asking them questions about mental wellness, buy them a coffee or something like that. I don't know. It's crazy, right? Therapists are human.
Yeah, I'm not on the clock right now. Thank you. I know you're an auto mechanic. Could you please tell me how to fix my car? It's like,
right.
It's a service I provide. It's not this for me, I came up with the question, and then I've been thinking, how am I going to answer this? And I thought, well, this is a dangerous question basically to ask someone who has narcissistic tendencies. And so I had a hard time. Well, everything is misconceived about me. And I wish everybody would change that misconception. And then some of the answers that I had for this, I thought, well, that's not very humble. That's assuming a lot by that. One that I am always surprised by is students tell me how bright I am and how do I know all this stuff. And I never perceive myself that way. It's just combining life experiences in a way that I'm able to synthesize it and put it together when I need it in the moment. But I think a big conception that people have of me, primarily because of my behavior, is I'm pretty impulsive in what I say. And their perception would be that it's impulsive. My perception is, no, I know what I'm saying. It's meant to provoke. And I've thought this through. And whether it's a reflection or a comment to kind of change the pace of what's going on with a group that I'm sitting around with, or whether it is truly kind of an idea that I have and the only way to get it out is to kind of say it as it is and direct, I kind of feel like it could be misinterpreted as being impulsive. But I've really kind of thought through this thing. And often, particularly in meetings, and I've been through enough board meetings and enough faculty meetings, that so much of the oxygen in the room is being sucked up by other people that I never have much chance to respond in the moment. So that gives me plenty of time to kind of phase out, kind of pay attention to what's going on, but really figure out what I want to say. And people might perceive that as impulsive by the way I say it or provocative by what I say, but it really is thought out, at least in my mind, pretty well. And I think that's a misconception. All right. We've been through the whole round. And so I've got a final question. And this final question came up because I like to have Mexican food every once in a while. And my wife has gotten more and more limited in what she wants to risk her stomach with. Not that we've had bad Mexican food, but just she's like, no, I want to go with the 4 or 5 favorites that I have every time we talk about dinner. So she went out with some friends this afternoon, and then she's out again tonight. And so I got to order out. So I ordered out Mexican food. So my question to you is, what's your favorite Mexican meal?
Yeah, just for the record, you also said eat in or carry out. Let me be very clear to everybody. All food is carry out. Every food that can be consumed is carry out.
Yeah, in some way or another.
Yeah. For me, it's got to be a beef burrito with black beans.
Okay, Mitch.
Yeah, I suppose for me, like I love chips and salsa. I know that's not a meal, but I like to eat like anytime that I'm having Mexican, I like to eat the meal like with the chip. And so that feels like that feels kind of like my thing, I guess.
Yeah, sometimes the chips and salsa come before the meal.
Right.
And as a result, that's all you get is in the meal is you eat so much of it that by the time the meal comes, the meal's just a carry out, literally in the box, not inside you with it. Angelika.
Yeah, does Chipotle count? Because that's my answer for this, and I like it doused in hot sauce.
Chipotle. Some people would say that's not really truly Mexican, food, but
that's a lot.
It's the best Mexican food. What are you talking about?
Mine is tamales. I can't. I mean, you can go through a bunch of drive-throughs and get pseudo Mexican food, but I find it hard to get to a restaurant that makes tamales. And sometimes if you look at combination meals, you can see they snuck a tamale in there. So for me, it's tamales. It's so much so that I get fascinated by food in the point where it's like, I want to make these things. And so I'll try and look at recipes and figure out how to do them. Tamales are really hard to make, at least for a gringo like me. They're hard to get right. And I've been through about 3 or 4 batches of them now and getting a little better. I'm not doing it in a traditional method, but so for me, restaurant Mexican restaurant, I want to get my a fair share of tamales while I'm there. And then, I'm eating it, but I'm also studying it for the next time I want to make tamales. So thanks to the firing squad, Elliott, Mitch, and Angelika. Eric's out watching a basketball game, and Gina's traveling somewhere and will join us again. And Stephanie was going to join us, but then had some delays in terms of getting. So we'll keep doing the 4, 5, 6, or 8, 6 or 7 group, depending on who shows up. And this is our 86th show, so we're kind of building up to a 100th show. And we're really just glad that you joined us. To listen to us or to view us on YouTube, you can watch the YouTube video of this if you're listening to us at youtube.com/@CFS podcast. And that will take you to the channel that we have there for Circular Firing Squad. And you will be able to see previous videos that we've put together and also connect with the podcast there if you'd like to. You can also find out about all of our podcasts at thepodtalk.net and check out the podcasts that we have there. Our theme music is from Menage a Quad, Real Swing Shet. That's it for this episode of Circular Firing Squad. Ready, fire, aim.